Hello, everyone, and thank you for tuning in to our Sister Queen Circle. I am Rachel Nix, and I'm so really overwhelmed and emotional about the fact that we have a safe space, a whole space for one another, and to educate our sisters and our community at large about the health disparities for Black women and birthing people. So for those of us who don't know, there is a Black maternal health crisis. Black women are 3 to 5 times more likely to die in childbirth than white women. We know that 80% of these births are preventable. I think it's probably higher than that. 30% of these deaths occur 6 months to 12 months postpartum, which I think we don't often understand. And most importantly, we know why it's happening, and it is racism. It is not economics. It is Black skin that causes us to not be supported and treated the way we deserve as birth queens. So without further ado, I would like our group of fabulous queens to introduce themselves and just share with each other, with everyone, what your name is, where you're from, and what your superpower is in this birth space.
Thank you so much for asking. I'm Georgette. I am Brooklyn born and raised Haitian American of the African diaspora. I am a very proud midwife, and my superpower is the fact that I love to speak Creole to my people. I love to share food with my people as well. That's my superpower.
Hi, everyone. I'm Rania Brooks Gordon. I am a board certified OBGYN, born and raised right here in Brooklyn, and also of the diaspora, proud Jamaican American. So I currently serve as the Associate Medical Director of our downtown clinic. And I'll say that my superpower is that I am a boy mom. I am a mom of 2 boys, Noah and Zane. They're everything to me, and I love just being able to connect with patients about motherhood and that journey, the journey through pregnancy and beyond.
I'm Trixie. I am born in Kenya and partly raised in Kenya and here. I am a certified nurse midwife with Oula. My superpower in this birth space, I can read the room really well. Yeah, that's that. Okay, great superpower. Tell me more. I have performed exorcisms. I knew what was happening. I know how to like create the space that is needed in order to deliver someone through this journey. So that's my superpower.
All right. Well, hello everyone. My name is Sanjay Hamilton, and I am currently the lead midwife at the Brooklyn office here at Oula. I've been a certified nurse midwife for the past 10 years. Born and raised in Brooklyn, by way of the beautiful South American country of Guyana. And my superpower, I would say, just being able to connect with folks during the most vulnerable time of their life. So I appreciate that.
And I'm gonna try not to cry.
My name is Ithamar. I am born and raised in Brooklyn. I am of Haitian Cuban American descent. I'm a former postpartum and NICU nurse, and now I serve as one of the perinatal nurses specifically for the Brooklyn office here at Oula. And my superpower is advocating like heck for our postpartum mummies.
Yes.
And I think I was so excited I didn't really introduce myself, but I'm going to start with, I'm the only one from Oakland, California, by way of Oakland, okay? By way of a slave ship, and maybe some other, colonizers. So, I am Rachel, born and raised Oakland, very proud. Spent half my life in New York and Harlem, I'm sorry. And now I live in the suburbs, but I really like it. There are no drug addicts on my block. I am an actor. I am a doula, lactation counselor. I am a trainer. I specialize in pre and postnatal fitness. The pelvic floor is my jizam. And I am a proud boy mom of a 3 and 6-year-old. And I'm the founder and CEO of Birth Queen, my nonprofit that I founded to combat the Black maternal health crisis. And so that is a big piece of why we're here, to amplify and educate and support our queens through this beautiful time. And my superpower really is getting the baby out. Okay. Yeah, so I teach practice for pushing, and it feels so dope. Even from my training, even if it was like virtual trainings, that I get DMs and messages. My OB couldn't understand how I just popped that baby out, and I'm like, yes. So it's great, and there are moments too when it's an emergency, like if there's meconium present, and if I can hone in with mom and get that baby out, and then afterwards you're like, wow, what if I wasn't there? You know what I mean? So I'm really passionate about women understanding their bodies and being in the center of this experience. So there is so much to cover, but I want to start with, like, how did we get to the crisis? So we know Black women are dying because of being Black in this space, not because birth is dangerous. So I would love for you to cover your beautiful history, and I'm so glad I know this, that of like your experience with midwifery in your family, and and just so people understand the history, and that there are normal looking Black women that are midwives that are from Brooklyn.
Yes, yes. So as I stated, my family's from Guyana, and my aunt, she was a midwife in Guyana. My grandmother, who had 11 children, 10 of them were all born at home in Guyana. My older brother, who was born in Guyana, he was also born at home. And the experience that my mother, when she talks about her birthing experience in Guyana versus here, it was just such a difference. In Guyana, they were just very hands off. She broke her water and nothing happened for 2 days. And the midwife just said, well, just walk up and down the street. And that's what she did, up and down the street. And then she went into labor, and she had my older brother. As for me, she was here in the hospital, hooked up. They gave her Pitocin. And it was just such a difference in her experience. And I was just like, something got to change. It's like something got to give, So that's a little bit about how I came into this space. Part of the reason.
Yeah. And I think for context, like, I think a lot of people don't realize, like, midwives, everybody was born with a Black midwife in this country who was probably a slave, right? And then we have Marion Sims entering the space, practicing on our bodies, cutting us without anesthesia, and deducing that we don't feel pain the way white women do, which holds true today, right? So there's this dismissal of the Black woman. So with that dismissal, we touched on this, and I want to get to this, that we don't have space to not be okay as Black women. Yeah. So can you all share, like, what do you need to feel supported as a provider in this space? And Ronnie, I actually want to start with you, because you are an OB and you are a Black woman, and you are, I'm sure, an outlier often in this space. So what do you need to feel supported to, do your work?
I think what we really need, or what I need, is resources.
Yes.
I have patients who come to me and say, I'm so glad I found you. I'm so scared. I don't want to die. And they're coming to me looking for me to be there the entire step of their pregnancy, through the entire journey. And it's not possible, because of call schedules, duty hours, all of the things. I can't always be there. So I want to be able to tell patients there are resources that the hospital provides, that our practice provides, that are nationwide, that are available to support you. Because we can sit here and brainstorm about a million ideas that can really help Black women, but if we don't have the funding, if we don't have the resources, things won't change. So I think that's the first thing.
Yeah. And that I had dinner with a wealth manager last night, and he's a Black man, and he said, I'm conflicted because I feel like what the bank invests in that's Black is charity and not investment. And he said it's not charity. And that really rings true, I think, in this space as well. Is it's not a check the box charity, it's an investment in humanity. It's a civil rights issue, and that if we support Black women, we all win, we all benefit from that. So yeah, Georgette, if you could talk about, what it feels like to not be supported in this space, right? As a midwife and as a Black woman.
Yeah, being that I'm the newest midwife out of the Oula collective here, I feel like I'm just in the throes of learning how to be a midwife and transitioning from that labor and delivery role as a nurse. So it's been challenging because now that I am the provider able to make these decisions for my patients, I want to feel like I can, but I don't necessarily feel empowered to do so all the time. They're expecting, they, meaning the hypothetical they, right? They're waiting for the patient to give birth within a respected time. And if I can't perform to that ability or to that expectation, then I look like, or it appears as though I'm the failure,
right?
As a midwife. And then the other factors that I think I've spoken to, especially with my lead midwife, with Sanjay, the factors that I can't control. That's been something that I've quarreled with myself, knowing that I can't save everyone, even though I want to. And it's too bad that the people that I am working with are not necessarily, they're not real people. Respectfully, it's an institution in which that we all operate under.
Right.
And they don't see it the way that I see it. I don't think that they view the care, the fact that high quality maternity care includes compassion, right? Includes urgency, right? Includes prioritizing their well-being over everything else, but it's normally the opposite in the hospital setting.
Yeah. So you shared that you were a postpartum nurse in NICU. Can you talk about the importance of cultural competency, like in a hospital setting, and also just the role of the nurse in the hospital? I really do have compassion for you all, and I think as birth workers, we can come in and kind of be upset because you're not acting like a doula, but you're not a doula, you're a nurse.
Yeah.
Right.
And then you have a lot of tasks and responsibilities and pressures and a whole lot of patients, right?
Yeah.
So can you just kind of talk about, I know that's like a multiple tiered question, but the hospital experience and your role and the importance of cultural competency.
Yeah, so I was in a unique position where I was dually trained as both postpartum and NICU. So it was two different dichotomies, because you have parents that are like in a space where they just delivered, they're in their most vulnerable time. And then you have parents, they delivered and like maybe they can't see their baby yet because they're not stable on postpartum. So then you become this medium where you have to like, I'm going to go check on the baby in the NICU for you while I'm also in charge of 12 other postpartum patients and still making sure that you're good. So you were always being stretched so thin in the hospital. And it always just seemed like you wanted to do more, but you couldn't, because there were several nights. It was just 3 of us on the floor. And guess what? We had like 24, 30 patients on the floor, and we call them couplets. So it's like mommy plus baby. And some of those mommies had multiples. So you might have a mom with twins. Like the system itself, I feel, is just so broken, because so many nurses, as we know, are leaving the hospital setting in droves. I guess you can say I'm one of them. My choice to leave the hospital was very personal, where I lost my mom from COVID, and it became like really triggering to even set foot in the hospital. But before that, hospital managements, they don't listen to us. We're telling them we need more staff. They're not doing that. But yet I just feel like showing up for my patients, like each patient just deserve individualized care. So I think with cultural competency, as you were talking about, that requires you to have an understanding. And that's what it really is. If you're not understanding where these patients are coming from, trying to understand what they need from you or what their partners might need. I have a perfect example of that. Like, patient was transferred to postpartum floor. She's from Japan, doesn't speak a word of English. Within minutes of transfer, she starts hemorrhaging. Within minutes, and no one took the time to get the interpreter on the line to explain to her what was happening. And her husband just left to go stay with their toddler. So imagine this poor woman on the bed, hemorrhaging. Everyone is in the room. She had a roommate, New York City hospitals. Her roommate's just like, what's happening? And we're all just like, oh my gosh. And I was like, can we get the interpreter on the line? Like she has no, and they're just like, we're going to the OR. You go get blood. Like it was just a horrifying, like a horrific experience. And she had no idea what was happening. So I think like culturally, they were saying like, we're going to give you some water. Like, I'm like, what are they giving her water for? And she's like, no cold water. And everyone's just looking at her. I'm like, warmth. They need warmth. That's cultural competency. You need to understand, like, you need to like bring like energy back into the body. And that's what she was asking for. And they're like giving her cold water.
Ugh, it's giving me chills.
Yeah.
So to that end, I think either of you can take this one, is for me, my goal in this space, whatever crown I'm wearing, is that mom is at the center of the experience.
Yes.
And I believe with the system we're in, it becomes the ego of the provider, and this like God complex that I'm telling you what to do. But my mother raised me with this saying that I say pretty much to anybody when I speak about this topic is, only you know what's best for your body and for your baby. And that is just so true. You don't need to have had a baby. You don't need letters behind your name. You need to be in touch and at the center of the experience. So can you talk about, like, as, midwives, how you keep mom at the center of the experience? Either of you want to take?
Yes, of course.
I think, if you read about the midwifery model of care, that is the central feature of midwifery, right? Is that it centers the burden person, and we're just there to kind of support and guide. And so when you show up in that, like with that, from that space, they'll always be central, right? But to your point, like when we talk about just like the origins of midwifery, if we think about like midwives coming from folks who were in the community that were just like either tasked or they felt called to be birth workers in the community, and then they started taking care of all the folks in their community and became midwives, right? And can pass on that profession. And eventually what ended up happening is a white supremacist capitalist culture came and said, this is profitable. We are going to take this group of people and put them into a hospital setting, and we're going to decenter these midwives, this profession, right? And so what happened in that sense, that the people who came in centered themselves and began to capitalize on the bodies of birthing folks, right? And so when you look at obstetrics, and when I talk about obstetrics and the obstetric model of care, not every OB is like that, right?
But they're in a system, which I want you to cover, because we have to have compassion. And if we don't understand a system, then we attack the person in a system.
Exactly.
And so, so go ahead and talk about, like, how much time do you have because of this system? You are shackled because you have to be a part of the system. So can you share?
That they became the center, and they also named instruments after them too. Yes. But same instruments that they practiced on Black bodies, right? Instead of naming them Anarcha, Lucy, and Betsy, right? Those are names that we should always be elevated, I think, in this profession, because their bodies were tortured, right, for the sake of perfection, and we introduced that trauma over and over again. Some say, well, it's recorded about more than 37 times for each of those individuals. And there's a number of women that we don't know, but we do know their names.
Yeah.
And so when you said that, I was like, yeah, you're hitting the nail on the head with that one, because the Sims retractor is so very much a very popular piece of a tool or equipment, right?
So explain, I guess, just your limitations as a provider.
So, when you are for myself, in my training as an OBGYN, I did a residency program where I worked 80 hours a week. So we were just sort of seeing patients.
Which was problematic,
Yeah.
by the way. But go ahead.
One of the hospitals I worked at, we called a factory because we
Wow.
were just seeing patients in and out. And it sort of makes you become like numb to certain things.
Yeah.
So I've had to like retrain myself. And as an attending, I'm working under the parameters of a hospital, under the institution, right? And so there are numbers that we have to meet and targets that we have. And when we have meetings about productivity, they want to know, can you see more patients? So I've had to push back. My colleagues, we've had to push back and say, listen, we need more time. Like we can't address all of these issues in 15 minutes. So that's why I'm really glad to be here at Oula, because I have more time with patients. I'm able to really center them, to spend that individual time, to make it personal, so that we can build that trust and that connection. So again, when I talk about resources, we need funding.
So let's talk about it. How is Oula structured? I mean, I think it's VC backed, but like we need to talk about that. Like I was talking about, I know VCs, so shout out to Oula and shout out to the money folks, you know. We need your money. So how does that work? Like basically they have invested, which those resources have created more time. Okay. So, but I think from a business standpoint, we have to understand too, midwives are cheaper and more effective. So can you talk about that for the money people?
So like you said, you know, we are, I don't know, cheap.
I know. More cost effective. You're more effective.
Yes. We're more cost effective. What I feel one of the problems that we face is that the reimbursement rate that we get is not as much as an OB. So it's like, if I do a vaginal birth, you do a vaginal birth, why are we reimbursed at lower than an OB? Like that needs to change, you know. But yeah,
Well, can I tag on that?
Sure, you could tag on
I
it.
think that one thing I understand about Oula, correct me if I'm wrong, that they are doing, at least Adrienne Nickerson, our CEO, one of the things that like was really important to her that actually drew me to Oula was that she was like, we need to make that change.
Yeah, she negotiated.
It makes no sense why an insurance company would reimburse you more than they reimburse me, simply because we hold two different degrees, right? It's just like racism. It doesn't make sense. So she's been working really hard to do that. But that reason is one of the reasons why Oula is one of the like only private practices, midwifery practices, that takes Medicaid in the city. It makes no sense. Like, if you try and find a midwife in New York City that takes Medicaid, you'll be very hard pressed to do that. And it's because people
or insurance.
Or insurance, period. A lot of private midwifery practice, they don't take insurance.
When I was pregnant with my eldest, I remember I had a PPO and they were like, well, we're not sure what the going rate of birth will be at that time, so we don't know what we're going to cover. And I was like, y'all got to go to the stock market?
When I had
if I had an emergency C-section,
they're not asking that.
So you can't pay $8,000 to the midwife for me to have a vaginal birth? And the stress, right, that I'm now under, because I remember I was teaching like 20 classes a week until I was 39 weeks pregnant. I didn't have all this time off and money, whatever, coming once I had him. So I was trying to plan for all those financial strains I was going to be under, and to be on the phone and feel like I've done everything right. I have a PPO, but that PPO doesn't protect me and it's not taking care of me. Like, why have to wear that stress? So can you take on the topic of weathering and like how that affects us as Black women? And then each of you just kind of chime in, like, how are you handling the pressures of being a Black woman in this space? No one asks us if we're okay. And so I think even if we took the rest of the time to talk about how we're doing, it's important to be safe enough as Black women to say, I'm not okay. And I'll be the first to be like, life is lifing on me right now, and I'm not okay. But can you, from a patient perspective, can you address weathering and truly how that affects us? Because we're not broken. The system is, racism is causing weathering.
Right, exactly. It's really the systemic oppression that
Right.
causes the weathering. And then also causes us to have patients that risk out and end up going to obstetrical care or having an obstetrical provider for their care. Since as midwives, we are low risk. We do practice a low risk model of care.
Right.
Right. So I think that's the conundrum that I feel like we were kind of talking about before we started today, was the fact that a lot of our patients do end up risking out of our care, even if we don't want to give that up, because of weathering.
Mm-hmm. Which then I would say we haven't really talked about doulas, and I am a doula, and it's so important to understand that a doula is there to support and advocate for the birthing person and the partner. They're actually part of my favorite. Watching like a man become a father is, when they crumble in my arms and start sobbing, I'm like, come on, baby. Because she like, I am not about to hug you right now. I'm like, come on, baby. And he's like, they hold it in, like they're trying to hold it together. And then they hear that cry and they're like, oh, especially if the cry takes a little, too long to come. But the doula is really there. To me, what I love about being a doula is to remind that family of their importance, right? And their power and their role in all of this. Like, I think when I meet with a birthing person, they're like, well, can I do this? I can't, they're very disempowered. And that's a white woman on the Upper East Side or a Black woman that's on Medicaid. And truly why I came into this work was because as a trainer, I was servicing a upper class white populace in Manhattan. And I had a woman I will never forget walk up to me and say, I'm scheduling a C-section because I can't have this baby. And believe it or not, their, husbands in finance would not allow them to have a doula. So we think, oh, people can't just afford it. No, there's dynamics happening in the house. There's many a call and virtual doulaing that I did because a partner told the woman, you're not allowed to have it because we're going to the best hospital in the city and you don't need that. Right. And so we have to address too the importance of just as women, like using your voice. What do you need? But that takes feeling confident or comfortable enough.
Empowered.
Right. And that's an issue right now that we're facing with Roe and all of this stuff is the world has not the world, right? We like to look over and be like, the Muslim people are crazy. I'm like, baby, no. Stop it. It's us. And culturally speaking, Christianity prioritizes the baby over the mom. In Judaism and Muslim, it's mom and then baby. And so we have built a whole structure, right? You could talk about postpartum because the fourth trimester and beyond, I'm very passionate about. Yeah. What happens? You're left. The fact that no one checks on you for 6 weeks, but you had to take your baby 6 times. Yeah. And then these pediatricians are like, well, breastfeed it's best, but like, go ahead and buy some formula. Yep. That's not support.
You're not producing enough milk. The baby needs formula. And like,
can you talk about like,
that's a big one.
Birth is all of it. Mom just gets dropped, right? When it's like they check a box once mom and baby leave the hospital, but that's not enough.
That's not it.
So what do you provide with the postpartum care? Because now you get to like activate your superpowers more, right? At Oula. Shout out to Oula. We need more resources for postpartum care. Okay.
So the postpartum realm, that's my baby since I started here. So first off, within about 7 to 14 days of discharge, we typically call the patients to do like a well-being check-in. So kind of assessing like, how's your bleeding been? How's feeding the baby going? Your feeding plan in general. Never say breastfeeding. I learned that very early on, like everyone's feeding preferences are different. So
Yep.
that's one thing that is super important because you don't know that individual patient's struggles in that time. I like to assess the family dynamic. Who's supporting you at home?
Right.
What's going on in the home? Like, how can we provide additional support? Also assessing like that mental health component, because within those first 2 weeks, of course, baby blues are probably still around, but if I notice like you might need a little extra TLC, then typically I'm following up again at later time points until we see them in the office at 6 weeks. So,
because 6 weeks is a long time
Yeah.
to be sitting at home with an infant and no help.
Of course, it takes a baby on average 3 to 4 weeks to fully establish breast or chest or body feeding. So I like to like encourage moms, those that are like, you know, I'm 2 weeks in and nothing's happening, I have no milk, etc. Like, I just really try to encourage them. It's a space of encouragement, just like you're doing a good job. And sometimes that's all they need. They're just like, I haven't heard that. Thank you.
I just was at an event, and there were two moms. I think they both had 6 week olds. I don't know why that's a tongue twister. And they both were like, it's just not working, so we're just pumping. So at least they were still like, you know, they're like, we want, you know, baby to have breast milk. And I was very like, I wasn't in my too much. I remember just saying, well, you guys, you've never done it. Baby's never done it. Just keep trying. And that's all I said. And she found me. I don't even remember how deep we got into who I was. She said, your words, I opened my phone that night and I had a DM. And she's like, your words resonated. Just keep trying. And I'll cry. She's like, I went home and I tried in my baby lap for 20 minutes. And it's just like, that's it.
Yeah.
You just need someone to believe in you.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And as Black women, like, how often are we told, like, I believe in you? So can you share how are you, sis? Can you share?
I feel like I'm on a roller coaster, a constant roller coaster. You know, I always knew that I wanted to catch babies. I always knew that. And before I became a midwife, I was a labor and delivery nurse. Now you're gonna make me start crying. I was a labor and delivery nurse at a hospital in a predominantly Black neighborhood, predominantly Caribbean neighborhood. And that's when I noticed firsthand the disparities that we face.
Can you share the number in New York for the people in the back?
So that in terms of
the maternal death rate in New York.
In New York, Black women are 12 times likely to die of complications compared to their white counterparts. 12 times.
In New York
City. That's insane. You know, and so when I worked at this hospital and I saw what was going on, I was just like, are you for real? You know, and so my path to midwifery, it became a necessity at that point. You know, it was like, oh no, I need to go right back to school because I need to be a part of the solution, you know? And so as I've gone along through my journey, it's ups, there's downs. There have been times where I feel like I have to protect my patients from the vultures. You know, there's times where patients will my favorite is afterwards where they will just hug you and thank you for everything that you've done. Like that's the best feeling in the world, you know? And then I talk to people who had horrible experiences, and it's just, you just can't imagine that another human being would treat another human being like that. You know, it's
So can we talk about how you all collaborate? So I just want everyone to pause and see, like, everybody gets along. And everybody has a different toolbox.
Absolutely.
And a different title. And different letters behind their name. And you know, she is the OB, so she is just the most fly. Because she might have more coins than everybody. That's so cute. But that's okay. She got diamonds on her toes. She got a little Cartier. She good. Okay. We ain't mad at you. Just a little bit. We just a little bit. Okay, we're very proud of you. We're so happy we're doing God's work. But can you talk, Trixie, about collaborative care and like how? So we've addressed like. Let me highlight. Black women are the solution to the Black maternal health crisis.
Yes. Yes.
Midwives, number one. We need OBs if we risk out or there's an emergency. I want you to activate that scalpel so I'm okay. But then I need my sister to help me breastfeed and talk to me and tell me I'm doing a good job. And then I need a hug. And then like we need it. And then we need this. We just need to be like, oh wait, she's on a roller coaster too? Oh, so my breakdown last night was not just me. I'm not the only one feeling like I'm having a hard time. We're all, it is a part of it. So can you address how Oula is, their superpower is collaborative care. And guess what? It works and we should all be doing it.
Yeah, and what I think I'll say is, I think Black people and their allies are the answer to this, the maternal crisis. Because, kind of before I answer that, going back to the weathering, I think the way I've dealt with it is I have to realize that I can't do this alone. And the reality is, you are a unicorn, right? And so, like, there's a lot of other white providers out there and other white midwives, OBs that are very much committed to not only like living an anti-racist life, but also like provide an anti-racist care, right? So like, so when I think about collaboration and Oula, I'm like, we're talking about like number one, just like getting on the same page. Like, let's have the same language. Let's understand the same things. We understand the statistics, right? And we understand the vision and the mission, right? So now like, how do we go about it? And I think the way Oula's trying to go about it is at least recognizing that the midwifery model of care, which centers the birthing person, which I think is built off of breaking down, putting away the ego, breaking down like white supremacist practices. That should be kind of like our North Star, right? Like that should be our guiding force. And so all the people that we are inviting into the space to collaborate with, like, should have for the same ethos, right? So like the OBs, we need OBs, right? We do. We need OBs. We need, I'd love to have a birth center, but we need a hospital to catch babies at, right? And so
say it louder. We need birth centers.
Yes.
Yes. We're just gonna disseminate this to all the money people.
We need birth centers.
Centers,
we need home birth midwives who have privileges and are backed up well. Like, we need hospitals that fully understand midwifery in the way Mount Sinai did. I wish, or I should say, in the way Roosevelt Hospital did.
They're not the same.
Because Roosevelt Hospital had that birthing center and they understood. So I think that Oula's trying, but like there are systems that have been created that are far beyond us. Like, we can't change everything, and like, so we're trying to figure out who are our thought partners, who are the people who are seeing this the way we're seeing it, who understand, who like have the same language, right? And we're tapping into them and we're bringing them in, and then we're like working with them and hopefully building something.
As an OB, you shared how you had to retrain yourself because you can get numb. I think all of us, right? Even if it's just violence, losing Black lives, we're like, oh, another one. Okay. You just get desensitized. But what can we do to, like, as far as provider education and buy-in of collaborative care model? And like, I honestly think a lot of it is just lack of information, which then creates, challenges. But if you can address like what would be the solution in your mind?
I would say definitely anti-racism training, anti-Black racism training that's mandatory. When I was in medical school, we didn't learn about implicit bias.
Right.
There were no mandatory trainings that we had to do. And even as a resident, very few, maybe like 1 grand rounds. And that was enough to say, you can touch birthing people, you can birth babies, but you haven't really done the training. So I think we have to rethink the medical school curriculum. We need to reevaluate the people who we're allowing to become physicians. And we really have to start there.
Yes.
Okay, let's go there. So she's so articulate and she's so good. I'm from Oakland though, so we gonna go there. And okay. So can you break it down? Because again, I do not think that even Black people understand the foolishness that is actually taught in schools. So can you give some examples of like, you know, like our skin is thicker or like the weird stuff that you may have ingested or seen, you know, how for instance we enter to have a baby and they're like, are you married? Well, that's none of your, I don't wear rings when I'm 39 weeks pregnant. So that kind of stuff, I think we just have to know, not to reiterate it, but just to be aware.
I think that there is a general lack of awareness about implicit bias and the people who are providing training. So professors at the medical school level, attending physicians who are teaching young physicians how to take care of patients, they're not aware of their own bias. But then there are people who are not culturally competent who internalize that information, and then that goes into practice. How they treat certain people and certain birthing people that they encounter because they've learned to think a certain way about Black women. So again, we need training. It needs to be a protocol. It needs to be mandatory. And if there are individuals who continue to show bias, they should be removed. You know, or there should be some sort of remediation. It can't just be an email that was sent or a little, you know, slap on the wrist. Because when we have bias in our systems, it kills people.
Yes.
So it's really important that we go back to the basics.
And can I add something? Just like 2 layers to that. The textbooks, when you open them, no one looks like us. Like, I know that there's a current medical student, I think his name is Chide Ibe or something. He's working on like creating images of what different skin conditions look like on the Black body, what a Black body looks like in different sizes. And I think that's not even in print. So how are you teaching non-Black providers what something can look like on the Black body if they don't even know what the Black body looks like and that it comes in so many different hues?
My girlfriend who's a NICU nurse had two crazy stories. One, she was like, that can't be that baby's, it's like too white or something. So she didn't even understand pigment. And then she said, oh, that baby's fine. It's going to be tough because her mom talks ghetto or something. Like, it's stuff like that I'm like, so you're not even like caring for the baby because you think it's extra tough? Like what? Like and this is in the Bay.
Right.
This is not in Mississippi. And to talk about that, I was talking to the one of the OBs at Kaiser in Richmond, so in the Bay Area. And she said that all of those doctors opted out of the cultural competency training. Wow. And that's in Northern California.
That
they found a loophole. So I want people to understand that this is not just like podunk, whatever. Like, you have Bay Area, okay? Woke whites, the most dangerous, who are like, I don't need to do that. I talked to an OB at a baseball game a couple years ago from Marin, and she's like, I'm here to help. I don't understand like why you don't trust me. And I was like, that's the problem.
But also, like, just wanted to, I feel like you started something, Rania, and then SMR jumped in at the right time with the imaging. And then that kind of immediately brought me back into that space when I was in clinical.
Let's talk about it.
Because where are midwives doing clinical orientation? It's mainly, we're being taught at underserved hospitals that have limited resources. Who else is there? It's the medical students that are coming from other countries to also practice on Black bodies. So we've made that the norm here in America, right? And so just like you said, them not even or like you said too, Rachel, about them not understanding pigment. Imagine this brilliant young person from Serbia who is now meeting a Black person for the first time, and it's painful to watch them assess this person as a student. Meanwhile, the person that is the patient thinks that it's what? That's their doctor.
Yeah.
Because no one is telling them this is actually a student doctor. And so they're getting practiced on by all these people that come from different countries. And I see it all the time in all of the HHC hospitals. And I do understand like there's a larger component, but imagine they're not getting that education either. And they're not even being taught in this country, but yet they can come, which is fine. I don't have a problem with that. But trying to take care of Black people and not understand the history of Black people in America is problematic.
Yeah.
Yeah. And perpetuates the same rat race, the whack-a-mole, right? You're chasing it down, trying to figure out like, well, maybe they didn't understand. Let me just provide them with additional information. But then there's somebody else that doesn't understand. And there's another class and there's another rotation.
Yeah.
And the people, to me, that should be taking responsibility for what their students know are not, because they don't find it to be necessary or important to them. Very similar to that OB that you were talking about, like, well, why? I'm here to help. Like I wouldn't dare go to Saudi Arabia and start practicing without first learning their customs, right?
And that's important. Like they can't be touched by men. Or how about before you just, like my pushing thing, I teach women how to push. If I see one more OB take a vagina and go, push right here, push right here. Whoa, you don't know if she's been raped. You don't just vaginal exams, walking someone through that, like, and breastfeeding, even chest feeding, because you may have been sexually abused and that triggers you. So we have to be careful about breast is best and all that. You don't know what their home life is, if they feel unsafe exposing themselves. So there just needs to be full education so that you open your toolbox and you choose what works for you.
And that's the thing too. We so beautifully said, just I really love you.
I know. I'm like, I wish I could be her. I'm never gonna be that smooth. Sorry.
It's like syrup. It's like that honey that you harvest.
It's organic. Of course. And a vegetable garden.
But the ethos, that we attract people with a specific type of ethos, right? That want to do something, that want to make a difference, which makes the practice so different. Like we're gonna ask for consent before placing hands, laying hands. But then when we enter a space where they don't carry the same ethos as we do, they don't do that, and we have to watch that over and over again. Very similarly to what you're saying, sometimes there's a time and place for a lot of things. I've come to learn that now. I was also the labor nurse. I was like anti-Pitocin. Don't you touch her. I will pick it in front of the hospital. Turn around. You don't want to be here. Come to this hospital because I can set you up. We, as a labor and delivery nurse, I felt like a lot of us shared this very same ethos I'm going to use today, and then end up like shuffling people around New York City through a pipeline. Because it's like, which hospital are you going to? Oh, okay. Like walking up to someone that's pregnant on the street. Like, oh my God, she looks so great. So tell me, where are you giving birth? Oh, is that where you're going? That's what you're going to do instead. This is my number. You're going to labor. You want to have your records with you, or get access to your records, and consider another facility that's going to treat you the way that you should be treated, but that carries that same type of model of care that we're trying to form here at Oula, which is why we need more OBs, because we need OBs that follow the same methodology as Dr. Gordon and Dr. Rodas and Dr. Vernon and Dr. Dayananda, which is centering the patient's holistic human experience above all else, right? Because when we work in a space that, with all due respect, right, because they may not have that time to have reflected the way that you did after residency, and instead it's about that factory, like Oh, well, she's decelling, so I'm going to put my hands on her vagina without letting her know, that because they feel like that is of the highest importance, and not asking for consent.
Right. Right.
Mm-hmm.
I know we're about to wrap up, but I want to talk about how do we build trust within our own community, right? Because there was a breaking down of trust. It's so complex that we weren't allowed in a hospital setting. We were having home births with Black midwives. Then we were told they're dangerous. Now we have to go into a hospital in the setting, and we've been practiced on throughout the history of this country with medical racism. But I also think it is so important that we as a people develop trust and respect for each other's craft and practice, and that we are the solution to not only this crisis, but to Black joy and to thriving and not surviving. So if anyone wants to kind of pick that up, or maybe I just said it, but I know, like, there is joy. So let's end there. Like, we touched on the crisis. We know we are the solution. Shout out to Black Queens. So what do you want to leave as like joy in this space, and like what you're excited about, or anything Black joy and birth?
Just to know that birth is a beautiful process.
Yeah.
Whether you just decide to give birth at home, in a birthing center, in a hospital setting, and especially for folks who give birth in a hospital setting, I would encourage them to create a space that brings comfort, that brings safety, whether that's with lighting, with scents, with music, yes, with a nice, with a dope playlist, with memorabilia. I remember there was this one, you're probably gonna remember this.
I love this story.
There was this one birth where I was the incoming midwife. She was already in labor, and the energy in the room it just wasn't flowing, And I never met unfortunately I didn't have a chance to meet this person during her prenatal care. So I entered the space, and I could tell that she needed her people around her. So I asked the charge nurse, I said, can I please get a Black nurse? So I was able to get a Black nurse. And so since I've never met them, I sat down, talked to them. And then when it was time for her to give birth, she played, I forgot the song, I can't remember, but it was a gospel song that she had.
Girl, I play gospel trying to get through my labor, my long labor.
It was a gospel song that she was playing, and I started singing, she started singing, we all started singing. She had a picture of her grandfather there, who was no longer with her, but she wanted to feel his energy there, and it happened to be his birthday also.
Oh
yes,
my God.
Yes. And the birth was just so beautiful. By the end, everybody was all in tears. And I just want people to know that they can have that too, that they can have that. It was just beautiful.
And to that point, I think what's missing to kind of like bring Black joy into this spaces are stories like that are written down.
Right.
I think about I read Ina May Gaskin, the whitest midwife ever, right? To get through my first birth. But why I loved her book, Spiritual Midwifery, is because it was the stories of all
this is possible.
This is possible. And so what we need is stories like that, but with our stories, right? And we don't
So maybe that's our next session. We bring some moms in and do storytelling.
Yes.
Yeah, like so that was my vision. So I'm so excited about them. But I founded my nonprofit Birth Queen to be the solution and to inject Black joy, but also abundance. We come from the most abundant continent in the world. And for me, Birth Queen was very intentional. I hear it as a mantra, and it's not plural. It's me telling you to birth queen, because that's our birthright, and so is our joy and our abundance. And so why I have joy in the midst of all this foolishness is that I know, like, we were designed and destined for greatness, right? And so to be able to give that gift over and over, to be able to call on cross-sector resources to be a part of the solution and not perpetuate Black trauma, because I have a major problem with that. And a lot of brands like to sit and cry about your birth story. No, we're not doing that. And yes, there is danger, but what's really problematic is if people don't understand, the cervix doesn't open if it doesn't feel safe. So if you are worried about dying, how the hell can we solve this crisis? Because your body is like, oh my God, I thought I was okay until my second baby, my Black son in the middle of 2020. I had enough trauma because you're killing Black men for sport. And then, I'm bleeding too much. And I said, I don't care. Do what you have to do because I don't want to die. And it was that moment that I was like, I did have that fear, but it was so deep inside of me that it makes sense that both of my labors were probably so long and I stalled at 4 centimeters for hours and hours and hours, right? And so that long suffering has to do with a racist system that we have, that we're stuck in. And so why I want everyone to see this, white, pink, purple, and alike, is that it is beautiful, but we need to feel safe. So that might mean a birth center. It might mean a separate, I always think that labor and delivery should not exist in a hospital. If I walk into Sinai East and I see freaking cancer ribbons, I'm going to go upstairs and think I'm going to die. That happened to my patient. She's pushing like, I'm going to die. I'm going to die. I'm done. And then you have a cancer patient walking out, people coming in. It's just not aware. And so I think it's just the humanity of it all. Like, I just want to give everyone their flowers, and we need each other and we need resources, and to continue to just have these conversations to educate, empower, and inject joy, hope, and options and possibilities so that we can all open our treasure chest of choices and activate those in an empowered way, and not feel like I have to do this. There's people that don't even choose their provider. They're just like, I don't know, I just went. You don't have to live your life like that. You know what I'm saying? But I really do want to honor each of you. I know we are all busy and living on a roller coaster. I think today, though, we can all leave at the top of the ride, and enjoy the ride down, knowing that change is happening. And I task each of you with saying, like, make sure you take care of yourself, because we need y'all. You can't fall apart. We can't fall apart. Okay? But I want you to say out loud, and then we're done. I have a podcast, so I want everybody to be honest, called Birth Queen. The questions I ask, and maybe we'll do that next, but time is, what do you need? What do you need? And then we'll close. I want you to say it out loud.
I need to feel seen. That's it.
I need to feel loved.
I think I need my time back. Yeah.
I need balance.
Amen. A woman.
I need solace.
Yeah.
And I need support.
Black girl